So, my name is Griffin. I will introduce myself in a little bit more detail in just a second. This is the proven framework I've come up with for becoming a service dog specialist. I really appreciate you all joining today. Thank you so much. I would like to help you guys get from dog trainer to service dog specialist. So, like I said, thank you for attending. So this is for you if you have experience training dogs and working with clients, if you want to work to feel more meaningful and sustainable, as well as if you want to learn how to work ethically with disabled handlers with a clear framework. It's not for you if you're after just shortcuts instead of real change. Um, don't get me wrong, this and everything I plan to teach you is a shortcut in and of itself, as opposed to watching 20 different YouTube videos or whatever. But dog training, as you know, as dog trainers, takes time. And so, what you'll learn today: how to specialize without renting or owning a facility. If you already do, that's cool, but if you don't need one in order to do it. The handler first framework that I use to coach disabled teams, and how to attract long-term service dog clients who truly value your work. So before we dive in, at the end, I will share a program that goes deeper into everything we'll cover today. So let me fully introduce myself. I'm Gryffin Danvers. I started out as a kid training horses and helping friends train their dogs. I've always had a love for animals and a way of working with them and understanding them. Um, that said, I had no idea yet that one day I would need a service dog myself. So when I was 16, I had brain surgery, which forced me to rest for a year, and according to my surgeon, I would not live past 30. I just turned 37 this past December, so I'm beating the odds, I guess, but also I'll go into it a little bit more later, but with my multiple disabilities, they're progressive, and I want to share as much knowledge as I can while I still can. So, but getting back to my story, just a short one here. Um, I tried many jobs, but I could not quite keep up. I've had three knee surgeries, and I have a spinal condition, and so when I was in college, I missed dogs quite a bit, and so I volunteered and learned service and therapy work through a dog training school. Excuse me, a service dog training school. And it was awesome. I learned so much from them on the service dog side and on the therapy dog side. Um, I still thought while I was working with them that I was relatively normal, and I say that with quotes because I don't have a better word, but able, I guess, would probably be a better word, until boss after boss said I just couldn't do enough. I was always told that I did a good job, but I couldn't work enough hours, or I couldn't stock enough shelves, or whatever it is I was doing. And from this service dog school, one of the people that volunteered there actually rescued a dog, and that dog's name was Jake. And this is Jake in my lap here. And so try and switch to my keyboard so I don't have my mouse going all over the place distracting y'all. But Jake was not originally intended to be a service dog. They rescued him and they brought him to the school to socialize him and train him and find him a forever home. And I fell in love with him. And so I took him home as a pet, having no idea how he would change my life. Um, and so there was this moment where I was sitting on my couch and I just could not, for the life of me, reach the remote. I live with chronic pain. I have most of my life, and I was in a flare and I couldn't reach it. Now, I had not trained Jake. Jake naturally enjoyed fetch. He's a border collie mix, but I had not trained any task. He was a pet. And I had worked him through his fears and everything, and he'd become a very even temperament and very confident, but not cocky dog. And as I was trying to reach for the remote, I finally gave up, and he got up off the floor and he grabbed the remote and he handed it to me. And it was at that point that I kind of had to face that I was disabled. And I know that might sound crazy being surrounded by disabled people at the school, but it's just one of those things where I thought if I could walk, talk, and chew gum and, keep up with my able friends for the most part, that I was still able. But in reality, I had to face my disabilities, and Jake helped me do that. So um, I. Um, I had to find a solution though for jobs in order to be able to do something I could do, that I could bring a service dog with me to do. And yes, technically you can, bring them to a job unless it seriously, uh, like it might be a consideration if you worked in a factory or something like that. There are certain things where a dog wouldn't work, but for the most part, you can have your service dog, or if you work like in a kitchen or something. But I had to have something that didn't drain my energy, something that didn't take all of my time, and something that I could sustain long term. And so I did start dog training, working with things I learned from the school, working with things that I had learned from different programs and mentors and things like that. Um, and I trained Jake with what I had learned, and I got my first official dog training job. And then shortly after that, um, Jake had to retire early because he had early onset major allergies. Like I couldn't take him out of the county without him having an allergy attack and getting hives and everything else all over. And being a border collie, he could take anything off that I put it on him in order to keep him from scratching them. So it was a whole thing. And as a service dog, if you can't even take him to the next county, it kind of fails them out medically. So he became a fantastic service dog, and then almost immediately after he was fully trained, had to retire, which he was not happy about, and we had to work on that. But around that same time, this bully right here named Riley, he had been coming into where I was working doing dog training, and I met him when he was 8 weeks old, and at 8 months old, around the same time that I found out about Jake, his owner came and said, this lab came over and bit him or whatever, and Riley didn't retaliate or anything. Riley's wonderful, but he's also a social idiot. A dog bites him and he thinks they're playing. And so he asked me if I could take Riley home, and I lived in a breed-specific legislation county. So I planned on training him some basic obedience and using my network of people in different counties to send him and find him a home. But while I was doing some basic obedience with him and working with him with different things and working with clients and everything, he just had the perfect temperament, and he seemed to really be able to understand me and sense my pain and sense my overdoing it before I could. And so I ended up deliberately training him from that point forward as a service dog. And he ended up being my main service dog for about a decade. Um, so with Riley and somewhat Jake, I started narrowing down my focus to training service dogs and working closely with disabled teams from the perspective of a disabled handler. I pretty quickly learned that the key was to specialize. People talk about niching down and things like that, and I used to specialize in mostly aggressive and behavioral issues and things like that, and work with the local vets offices and rescues and things like that. And that was also too hard on my body. So I went and kind of moved over to using my experience as a handler as well as a trainer to start training service dogs. Instead of doing pets and aggressive and behavioral issues, and trying to help every type of dog owner, I focused on one community, like I said, disabled handlers. And then it ended up being kind of a word of mouth thing, and people would see me around town with my service dog, and I ended up getting a lot of disabled handlers started seeking me out because they felt understood, and with the trainers they had been working with, between the homework they were given or the way that they were talked to and multiple things, they felt like the trainer just had like a set program and wasn't adapting to their disabilities. And they were having a hard time, being an owner trainer and they needed support. So seeing me out with my service dog, they would ask where I got him trained, and then I would say, well, I, trained him myself. I'm a dog trainer as well as a service dog trainer. And then they would start working with me because they felt like I got them. So, over the last 13 years, I have trained more than 80 teams at this point. And with that, limited energy, limited time, and a repeatable but adaptable framework. So, I also am involved in dog sports. I'm a judge for Iron Dog. CGC, I'm sorry, CGC certified educator and tester. And just for the record here, I did not train Shorty Rossi and his pit bull, but I met them and he made a huge impact on me, and I learned a lot from him and from his rescue work and his service dog work. And so I was very thrilled to meet him, and so I don't want to take credit for that in this picture. Now, before I go further, I do want to say that the stories that I talk about with clients in this webinar are clients that I've specifically talked to and have given permission for me to share their stories. I did live in the Maryland, D.C. metro area for a lot of my career, and so I worked with a lot of people where I signed NDAs and things like that. So these people that I talk about are the few people that I can share with you. Um, so if I can do this with my body and my limits, I believe that you can do it with your skills and your experience. And I did it using the same handler first framework that I'll walk you through today. Okay, so some of you have already been training service dog trainers, but for those of you that haven't, or even if you have, becoming why move from dog trainer to service dog specialist, or why become a specialist with me? Uh, and the answer to that basically is that as a dog trainer, you compete with many other trainers in a crowded market. It's a little harder to stand out and limited on income because of training time and how many clients and turnover. It focuses on obedience or behavior problems. It's generally short-term clients. In my experience, I've been dog training about 18 years, service dog for about 13, 14. I'd have to do math. But most clients have one or two issues that they want to deal with, and that's their goal. They do 6 or 12 weeks, and then they might come back a few years later if they have problems. So generally, it's short-term clients and constant turnover, and then little or no training on disability, access laws, or handler support as a pet dog trainer. Whereas as a service dog specialist, there's fewer trainers that have this skill, which is less competition. You're seen as a specialist, not just another trainer. I use clear frameworks for handler competency and public access, uh, building long-term partnership with clients and their dogs, and I work directly to improve the daily life and bring deep purpose, and that's what I want for you guys as well. So not only that, but there is a growing need for service dog specialists. There are more handlers that are seeking service dog support each year. COVID also made that go up even higher. So we have essentially roughly three categories. You have the older people that are still able to handle a dog and that are disabled from being older. You have people that have different disabilities that have hit them at different points in their life, and you have people that have been disabled all of their life. COVID created a lot more of the middle group where people were able and they got long COVID and they became disabled. And so between people living longer and COVID and a couple other things, the need for service dog specialists has gone up dramatically. And unfortunately for service dog programs, there's a average of a 3 to 5 year wait. Now that wait is based on after you've been accepted to the program. The average acceptance time to a program is 3 months to a year. So if you unfortunately got the maximum time of that, that's about 6 years waiting for a service dog. Many disabled handlers are told to owner train and with little support. And most cities have very few trainers who truly understand disability. But not everyone becomes a service dog specialist. Some trainers prefer to stay in general pet dog training, which is cool if that's your thing. Some don't want to learn the disability and human side of service work, and some aren't ready to leave their comfort zone quite yet and go into a specialty. So, my question for you is, are you ready to step out of your comfort zone? If so, type yes in the chat. I'm going to get a sip of my drink again, and then I'll open up the chat and talk with you guys for a second. All right. Chris Crockett, the entitled and spoiled, over it. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Let me know. Mara says yes. Chris says yes. Aiden says yes. Awesome. One new. Not out of comfort. Been working with disabilities for 10 years. Fair enough. Fair enough. I feel you. Alrighty. So here's what you'll learn next. We're going to talk about how to specialize using a consult-based model, even without a facility. And we are also going to, I apologize. There we go. Trying to make sure all the technology works here. Ah, how to clearly communicate with disabled handler and build trust and authority, and ways to attract long-term clients who truly value your service dog work. So if a pen and paper is your thing, a notepad, or just listening, whatever works for you, grab it and let's get started. So first things first, how to specialize without a facility using a consult-based model. So over the years, I've created a human-first model. And that is handler-centered assessment and planning, starting with client-led story of daily life and disability, identify key functional challenges and environments, homework, transit kind of stuff, and translate these into possible service dog task ideas and training priorities. Now, I won't go too deep into it, but the general framework for most organizations is not just about the waiting list, but it's also about they are generally focused, they niche down as well. So it's, just for veterans or it's just for PTSD or just for the blind, et cetera, et cetera. So it's in with owner training. Yes, we specialize in certain things, but the reason it's handler centered is more so because with program dogs, they take the dogs and they match it to the human, and the human generally gets anywhere from a week to a month worth of training, and then they do get some support depending on the organization throughout. But from my experience and from what I've heard from other clients, they don't get enough support, and that's part of the problem. And a lot of these organizations are overrun with people, and that's why the waiting list is so long. So I'm not criticizing them, I'm just saying it's a difference. So with this handler-centered approach and human-first approach, what we're doing is we are having intake and goal setting sessions online or in person, using structural intake form, history, routine, access barriers. We co-create 3 to 5 clear, measurable team goals, and we set a realistic timeline and check-in schedule. And so we are focused on the owner in the owner training, not just the dog training. Um, and the handler's skills. We want to teach them the core mechanics, the marking, the timing, the reinforcement, delivery, practice advocacy and disability etiquette with them, do role plays, assign simple at-home drills to build handler fluency. Because a lot of people don't realize it, but even with program dogs, they tend, no, I won't say tend, they can often retire early because something happens and the handler doesn't know enough about dog training in order to handle it properly. And so then the dog doesn't get what it needs to get over it and work through it and be able to work again. And so it ends up washing out or retiring early. With the human first approach, as a service dog specialist, you are training the owner trainers to be trainers. Obviously, depending on your years of knowledge and everything, some of you in here, like you said, 20, 25 years, you can't cram all that into one person, obviously. But we want to teach them how to work through things so that when we're not around, they're they and their dog have a better chance of succeeding because they will know how to work through those things. So we use checklists, templates, and groups for follow-up, sending brief session recaps plus daily practice checklists. Use standard templates to track service dog tasks and public outings when they get to that point, and offer small group Q&A or online peer support for troubleshooting. So, to give you a sneak peek inside the Service Dog Mastery Program that I told you I would talk about at the end, it is the human first system. I've created the client intake questions template, so you're not winging it. If you're someone who hasn't worked with disabled people before, I also talk about the different language and the inner community kind of thing about it. Some people prefer to, for example, be called, um, a disabled person, and some people would rather have it be person first language. So I have notes in there like that, and I have questions you can ask respectfully and things like that. So the disability spectrum and common needs quick guide. You don't need to be a doctor to connect daily life to tasks. Um, it you can take what the issues are and you can with it, obviously not for everything under the sun, but for a lot of things you can connect daily life issues with a task that can help with those disability issues. I have a full class showing how to go from intake to daily life to service dog task ideas. So, for example, a lot of people have a hard time doing longer training sessions, especially on a bad day, or getting exercise for their dog. So, one of my tips and tricks is something I do with my dog. So, uh, I know it's bad, but I'm also autistic and very food sensitive, so most of my meals come in the microwave, okay? So, during the time my food is in the microwave, I'm playing ball or training with my dog. And so that's 2.5, 3 minutes. As trainers, we know that short sessions can work really well along with repetitions. So if I eat 3 times a day, that's a minimum of 3 short training sessions. With my particular disabilities, I can do that. That's just one example of how I take dead time in a schedule and turn it into mini training sessions that are accessible for um, my level and other people that have a similar level of disabilities to I do. And by level, I don't mean better or worse. I just mean more or less physically able to do something, but even people that, have less hand movement than I do or something, there are different ways to get around different things. And I go into that in more detail in the course. So you just need a plan that works. So, for example, with David, we did what I do with teams, and we started with the handler's life. What did mornings look like? Where did things break down? And what needed to change first? And he said that after applying what I learned, my wild dog, as he called him, became a model citizen. People started asking me for training advice. He didn't need a facility to do that, just a handler-centered plan. Okay? And his dog was awesome, but he was a very, very hyper dog that needed a lot of activity. Now, thankfully, David was able to give him that activity that he needed, but he didn't know how to channel that energy and balance the training and all those kinds of things. So we started out with David's life, and we worked the training in David's life so that the dog got what it needed and David got what he needed. This is what I'm talking about. So, do you see yourself using the human first consult model? Type yes in the chat if you are any of these 4 things: handler centered, intake and goal setting sessions online or in person, owner training support focused, checklist templates, groups, and all that kind of stuff for follow up. All right, so that's the first thing. Second thing is the clear communication steps that build trust with disabled handlers. So, your communication energy matters with service dog teams. Oh, sorry. I thought my service dog Joe was whining, but apparently she's dreaming and sleep whine barking. So, uh, what dogs actually respond to you? I know as trainers, you probably already know this, but this is one of those things that I've noticed over the years is that in many teams I've coached, female handlers often use softer, more nurturing and playful energy. So dogs wanted to play, but not listen to them as much. Uh, Men tend to use more in charge energy with firmer tone, but they're less rewarding with the dogs. They don't reward as often. They don't pay attention to directions as much. And so dogs tend to actually listen to them better, but not really connect with them as much. Now, mind you, these are generalities. This is not every single person. I believe nuance is very important. So, the reason I can speak to both of those things is not just observation of other people, but I've quite literally lived in both ways. So I spent over 30 years. I was born female, and normally I wouldn't bring this up, but it actually did really have an impact on dog training and communication and learning how to uh, bring a middle and have a communication system that works for both sexes and the ones in between. So I was born female, lived over 30 years that way, transitioned about 5 or 6 years ago. Um, so I was the softer, squeakier voice woman trainer and handler, and now I also have the deeper, more in charge male trainer ability without intentionally deeping my voice when I needed to. Um, I'm the same person, I'm the same skills, but it's very interesting the different reactions from dogs and from handlers or clients. When I was a woman, women would open up to me more. They would tell me more details. They would tell me more about their schedule. They would tell me more about the dog and the dog schedule. And similar to the stereotype that women that have kids know, the kids' friends' names, the teachers' names, the doctors, what size shoes the kid wears and all that. And stereotypically, the dad doesn't. Um, I would have a lot of women that would come to me and, they would do that. But now that they see me as a male trainer, they don't open up to me nearly as quickly. And I can understand that. Having lived as a woman, having had uh, the need to kind of be aware with men who is safe and who isn't. And I mean, no disrespect to the men, but it is a fact as a woman. Um, and so the reverse kind of happened. Now that men see me as a man, they listen to me faster, they don't argue with me as much. And I don't mind, learning or being argued with in terms of that way, like a back and forth conversation. But I used to have men tell me all the time, well, my wife needs to learn that, but I don't. And yes, when you're working with service dogs and you're working with a handler, that's one thing. But I can promise you, having been married before, that the people that are in the handler's life that live with them affect the training of the dog. My ex untrained several things and I retrained several things, and there were many conversations about that. So because he didn't think he had to follow the service dog rules in order, he just thought I needed to follow them and the dog would listen to me. So it would be a back and forth in the house. So we had to work that out. And that's true with clients too, whether they're in a relationship or whether they're living with family or they have a caretaker that comes by or whatever the case may be. If there's other people in the house, they affect the dog training too. So now men trust me right off the bat. Men listen to me faster, and men are, more willing to, follow what I say. But they still don't have as many details as the women did, in general speaking. So, as far as the dogs are concerned, most people thought that as I transitioned, that the dogs wouldn't recognize me anymore, they wouldn't listen to me anymore because I smell different, I sound different. When the reality is, as my voice got deeper, it actually got easier to train the dogs. And I hate to say that, because most of the best dog trainers I know are actually women, but women have to work a little bit harder for it with their voices and with, generally speaking, getting men to listen to them if they're clients. So I found it very interesting. That said, one of the things about the dogs is that I did actually have to relearn kind of to be more excitable and to be more fun and rewarding and everything. Because I guess sort of the socialization of, being treated as a man and, acting, not acting, but uh, being a little bit different, standing a little taller, being myself, all that kind of stuff, I lost a little bit of that playfulness. And so I had to kind of relearn that. So my point in all this is it's not a trans issue kind of thing. What I'm talking about is I've literally lived as both as a handler and a trainer, and that has really helped and shaped my communication skills, my dog training skills, and learning how to help people better because I've lived in both worlds, or all four worlds, so to speak. Female dog trainer, female handler, male dog trainer, male handler, all four. Um, so that's why I bring it up. And I got a little ahead of myself. But nonetheless, the voice, the body language, the social habits, they shape every session. Most handlers were never taught how to be both clear and rewarding with their dogs. And also, a lot of handlers don't feel safe with their trainer for the reasons that I talked about before, where their trainer is set on a program and that's how they do things, and they don't really adapt anything that the handler needs, or even if they consider themselves a service dog trainer, they might be adapting a couple things, but they're still very stuck on, their program. So I wanted to make sure that I started changing how I talk to handlers slower because I learned that I'm a fast talker and I literally focus on talking slower, even in this webinar. Clearer, as in checking in that they understand what I'm saying, not just rambling on and on and on, and expecting them to follow directions, and with explicit consent and check-ins. And Rachel here taught me a lot about that, and so did another client. That was very helpful. Uh, I do deep dive it more in my program. So I started coaching on how they spoke to their dogs, which I did do before, but like I said, with crossing over between the genders, it gave me more to work with, more to be able to explain the tones, more to help come up with a framework that everybody seemed to understand better that worked overall. So fine-tuning words, tone, and timing until the dog clearly understood them. And that was especially true with Rachel with all four different personalities and getting the dog to listen to all four personalities and figuring that out. So, my inclusive handler communication framework is matching the handler's preferred way to learn, asking what helps most. Is it verbal? Is it visual? Is it written? Is it a combination? Short sentences, simple words, and steady tone. And that's not to say because people are stupid. They're not. Disabled or not. But it's because the easier you can make something to do for someone, especially someone who's disabled and already has enough challenges in life, the more likely they are to do it. So starting each session with one clear goal, written recaps or visual examples. I'm not the best at remembering to like write things down and send it to people, so I would generally do videos, and then I would just send them the video after class. Um, or I would offer them to video me with their phone, and that way they would have all their, homework and instructions on video. Um, Now we have, AI and all kinds of other tools, and the can't remember what it's called, but it basically goes on the back of your phone, and you can press a button and it records everything you said and then transcribes it for you, and you can email it to whoever. If I had that a few years ago, I definitely would have used it. So I also demonstrate and then have the handler repeat it so that we can see, are you getting what I'm, putting out, or do we need to tweak it a little bit? Maybe the way I demonstrate it, maybe their body doesn't quite work that way. And so even though they can walk, talk, and chew gum, as I say, they walk differently. So the way I showed them doesn't work. So then I got to tweak it a little bit to make it work for them. Checking in often to confirm their understanding. And like I said, ending with a short recap and then a next step. So, tools for your communication, a sneak peek inside here. I have an inclusive language and etiquette checklist, which stays respectful and disability informed. I have the legal confidence pack, which simplifies the ADA, the state law checklist, so you can answer, can I do this without stress? And then tailored feedback and weekly guidance for you all, personalized feedback, so you're never guessing if you're trying to figure out something with a client or your homework during class, whatever it is, whatever point you're at, I'm here to help you. So Mike is another trainer that I mentored him in service work and he mentored me in something else. So, one of the things that he said when I asked him for a review was that Gryffin adapted his teaching to my learning style. If I didn't understand something, he reframed it until I did. So, when people feel understood, they trust you and their dogs learn faster too. So, now's a good time. I saw a couple people hit up the chat. So, if you see yourself using this inclusive handler communication with a short, steady tone, slow pace for the handler and the dog, obviously that's nuanced. Everything depends on the handler and the dog, but by slower pace, I mean at their pace. Active listening to the disabled handler, simple, repeatable steps, and regular check ins between sessions, then type yes in the chat. All right, so ways to attract long-term clients who truly value your service dog work, which uh, one of you mentioned in the chat. I apologize, I don't exactly remember which one of you at the moment without going back and looking at it, but yes, this is one of those things to be valued. Um, so general dog trainers get flooded with fix this now clients. The entitlement that you were talking about, work feels in the magic wand, work feels scattered, reactive, and emotionally draining a lot of the time. And your calendar is full, but your work doesn't feel really sustainable because it's all the turnover. Service dog work opens the door to steady, committed teams. So it does attract committed clients because handlers, generally speaking, no real results take months, not weeks. I will say most of them don't realize that it still takes, on average, about 2 years, depending on what age of the dog you start out with and how much they're able to do every week, so on and so forth. But they at least understand that it's not going to be like a 6 week class and they have a service dog, generally speaking. Um, the dog's work impacts their daily independence and safety, so they have a lot more motivation to learn and to do their homework than pet dog clients do, where they really just want to fix one or two things and they don't generally care about the rest of it, even though it all ties together. Um, they either budget for ongoing training and check-ins, or one of the things I talk about in my class is that the first session involves talking about what it takes to have a service dog, and that budgeting is part of that. Because just because you already have the dog and you're not paying 30 grand to some program doesn't mean that you're not spending money on tools like vests and leashes and treats and paying the trainer and emergency vet bills and all the things. So your schedule and income become more predictable because you're working with clients for a longer period of time. You don't have as much turnover. Um, and so how do you find those committed dog clients? There are numerous ways. So first recommendation would be connect with the big box stores. No, I can't say their names in this webinar. And Saint School and other dog training schools who refer out for service dog training. I can tell you the two major big box stores because I have worked for them and know people who currently do work for them are not allowed to train service dogs and they're not allowed to train aggressive dogs. So they have to refer out. Be the person they refer out to. There are other dog training schools or dog trainers who don't want to train service dogs or don't know how to, and they refer out. So create your network with other trainers who doesn't want to train service dogs. When you get someone who needs a service dog trainer, have them contact me. Build relationships with veterinary offices, disability organizations, Facebook groups. You would be surprised how many different ways there are. There are a lot of people looking for a service dog trainer, and the truth is, we just don't have enough of them. You can also use social media to share simple training breakdowns and example cases online. You can join service dog trainer communities for referrals and opportunities. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but that's also part of what I'm trying to create here is our own community to have people have access to multiple different trainers in multiple different places so they can find one near them. So growing your service dog practice. Another sneak peek into the service dog mastery is the client journey trainings. So in phase 6, you get your first uh, client. Phase 7, you deliver the perfect service. So towards the very end of the program, I'm encouraging you to get a client and you're um, able to ask me questions and things like that. For those of you that have already been training service dog clients, maybe it's something that you haven't done before or, anything that you might need, just let me know. I also do a marketing launch kit for you guys, positioning scripts, client messages, and a simple launch plan for you to be able to talk to people, send to veterinary offices, things like that. You'd be surprised how many veterinarian offices, I used to work closely with them because of behavioral issues. If they had aggressive dogs that they couldn't handle or whatever, and their owners could barely handle them, my local vet in a couple places would call me in to handle the dog so that the dog could get medical care. And I ended up learning a lot about, how to pull a vein over and how different positions to hold the dog in safely and things like that. And on top of that, I learned how many people actually, ask their vet, hey, my doctor says that I need a service dog, or due to my disabilities, I'm looking into getting a service dog, or making this dog my service dog. Do you know any trainers? Because trainers and vets offices work closely together. So you'd be surprised how many clients come from vet referrals. And then, like I was saying, I'm trying with this not only to give you this information, but create a specialist circle community where we can all help each other. Like I said, it's important to have mentors, but it's important to have points of view and different specialities and different abilities to be able to help the client in front of you and not to have ego get in the way. There is more than enough disabled clients. We don't have to fight over them, so to speak. We can share knowledge. So you get 6 months of mentors and peer support, so you're never doing this alone, especially when you're getting started. Ask any questions you have. I'll be on there answering things. People who have been through the program will be on there helping and answering things. All of that. So what's a committed service dog team look like? Um, Sean started with an 8-month-old rescue who was overwhelming in daily life, didn't ask for a quick fix. She agreed to a structured plan and homework. Sessions after session, she kept practicing and adjusting. And she said, I really believe we wouldn't have been able to keep Dino without the training we received from Gryffin. We are much more capable dog parents now. So, Dino, I'm not sure why they picked Dino, but that's a whole nother story. He is a wonderful dog. Don't get me wrong, but I wasn't quite sure he was going to make it in the way they needed him to. But we got it figured out. So these are the clients that your practice is built for, and the people who are willing to do their homework and who aren't entitled. So I'm gonna get a quick drink again, and if you are into no more cheap and quick fixes, clear processes, serious clients, mutual respect and real results, and work that actually feels sustainable, type yes in the chat. Any questions you have, let me grab my drink and then I'll open the chat. To get to know your local rescues off or a discount. Yes, rescues as well. I will say that part of what I teach is also how to evaluate rescue dogs and shelter dogs. Um, but you do have to have a good relationship with your local rescues and your local shelters. And some of them do have rules that would prevent you from being able to evaluate the dogs from service work. So I do encourage that out of the dogs I have trained for myself, the rescue dogs are the ones that succeeded the most in terms of success and washout rates. And for my clients, the rescue dogs also outweigh the purebred dogs in terms of success versus washout. All right, so those are the three things that we're going over tonight. So what you've learned so far in a nutshell is the opportunity to become a service dog specialist, high demand, low competition, sustainable niche, human first consult model, so you can use with or without a facility, assessment planning, handler support, all that stuff. Inclusive handler communication steps that earn trust, and ways to attract long-term service dog clients who value your work. From referrals to example-based content to honestly going to the park with your dog and doing training and wearing some shirt or vest that says service dog trainer. I kid you not. Uh, so, do you feel like you have more clarity with what you've learned so far? Get a sip of my drink again, and I'll check the chat because it looks like somebody said something while I was talking already. I'm on Zoom. No, don't go away. Let me open up the chat. There we go. Um, let's see. All right, so we're having a rover argument here. That's all right. Well, not argument, discussion. Discussion's a better word for that. All right, so what if you're having a problem with a team or a client you can't quite figure out? So, as I touched on earlier, but every service dog trainer, every trainer eventually runs into a problem with a team that they can't figure out. And you try everything you know, and something still feels off, is still not working. So reaching out for guidance to mentors and other service dog professionals for guidance. Um, each one that I as in my network of people has given me a new way to look at the handler, the dog, and the disability needs. Perspective is the key. So a lot of them challenged what I believed. I was originally taught that some tools were wrong or not allowed. I mentors help me sort myths from reality and keep learning for my clients' safety. I do consider myself a balanced trainer, but I am very much a what works for the dog and what works for the human and how things are perceived by them. So to give one example, um, you know, a lot of people would be there's debates, and I'm not going to debate every tool in this webinar, but for example, an e-collar. The very old original e-collars were quite literally shock collars. They literally shock the dog. The newer age version of e-collars are like a stem, which we use on people all the time, and I have had for multiple years, recovering from surgeries to help with pain, all kinds of stuff, and they literally stimulate the muscle. Now, how the dog perceives it is what's important. You can train it in a positive way. You can train it like a clicker, that the stim is the clicker. You can train it as a consequence, that the stim is a correction. You can train it in multiple different ways, but regardless of your training style, if you're at one end or the other in the middle like me, it's how the dog perceives it, and that's what's important. So there are also things like, depending on where you're traveling to different countries have different laws on what tools you're allowed to use and things like that. And there's a lot of discussion on that. So I'm not having that debate today, but we do talk a lot about it in the class. And my big thing is education, that if you're going to use a tool, you should know how to use a tool and you should understand dog behavior and dog body language, etc., well enough to know if the dog is perceiving it as a reward or a correction. And for both, are they perceiving it as a high reward or a low reward or somewhere in the middle? Are they perceiving it as a high correction or a low correction or somewhere in the middle? And teaching handlers to read their dogs and read their dog's body language and understand, regardless of what kind of trainer you are. Like I said, I'm a balance trainer, but this course will teach you whether you're completely positive, whether you're balanced like me, or whether you're a little bit more old school. This course teaches you how to do everything regardless of that, because it's based on connecting the human to the dog training and taking the dog training you already know and helping you turn that into tasks and turn those tasks into helping the humans. It's like a circle, it goes all the way around. So, you can, for example, teach a dog to fetch, by either natural ability, or if you're trying to teach a dog to fetch, um, then you can probably, off the top of my head, do it in 5 different ways. And there are some dogs, like Riley right here, that will never learn to fetch. You can throw something and it would hit him in the head, and he would just look at it like, why did it hit him in the head? Or you could throw something past him, and he had absolutely zero interest in fetch. It didn't matter which way I tried to teach him, he was not a fetching dog. So it's also recognizing when the dog just can't do something you might want it to do. Um, All right, so I realize that service dog work is about adapting to the dog handler team in front of you, like I said, and that community keeps us growing and serving more teams. I could, by teaching you guys and teaching more trainers, I, through you, can help more teams. I am no longer physically able to do the physical training, so I am doing my best to pass on my knowledge of nearly 2 decades to help you guys help people and grow a community together. So this is why having a mentor matters. A mentor shortens your learning curve with service dog teams. It helps you avoid ethical and legal mistakes. It gives you real world examples with disabled handlers, from myself to my students that I've had that have given me their permission. And the guidance keeps you focused, confident, and supported. You also don't have to figure everything out on your own. So what's the impact of becoming a service dog specialist? So I mentioned earlier how many people are out there that need your help. Okay. This is just one example of a post that I recorded for this, and you see all these comments, and in all these comments are mentioning nonprofit wait lists, owner training with support, and others like breeders offering to um, donate dogs and things like that. There are other dog offer of help, but there's a real lack of guidance. And over 20 programs named, and still not enough trainers. And in this particular post of over 20 programs named, none of those 20 programs were the right fit and could train a dog for this particular handler because they either wouldn't allow training for multiple disabilities, or they were only for veterans, or they were only this or only that. So even if the person could get to one of these programs from wherever they lived, they didn't qualify for over 20 programs because of their type of disabilities. So there is an absolute gap for ethical service dog specialists that we need to fill. Now, I said I would talk about Rachel and the DID. Four personalities. She had multiple panic attacks a day and was in her 40s living with her folks still. She'd moved away for college for like a year or two and then ended up moving back home. She's been in and out of the hospital for her psychiatric disabilities. And she's actually one of the few clients I've had where her psychiatrist, I don't remember exactly if it was her psychiatrist or her psychologist, but one of the two actually recommended her getting a service dog. Now, I had trained her sister's pet dog, and her sister and I ended up becoming friends later. And so Rachel here, saw me on a regular basis and with my service dog and started asking me questions about it. And one of you mentioned, the bond with Jake, and I said I used him for a lot of things. And, so since we lived in the same county, I said, okay, well, here's this fully trained service dog. She was not a dog person, she was a cat person. She was really hesitant about getting a dog. And so one of the things that I did was I said, okay, well, Jake would love to go out and work for a day. So, we didn't go anywhere where a regular dog couldn't go, but we went to a parking lot. We went to like a Lowe's or something, where we might run into other dogs. We have loud noises where she often would have a panic attack. And she used to carry around, I believe it's in a picture on the next slide or something, but this like big school backpack that had all kinds of medication in it and that had all kinds of activities for her panic attacks and shutdowns and emergency meds and all kinds of stuff. And so we went on an outing with Jake. And when she had her panic attack, because I've also had panic attacks, Jake knew what to do with the panic attack. And so Jake helped work her through the panic attack, and Jake helped convince her that a dog was the right thing for her. Now, I'm not saying you can do that with your dogs necessarily, or demo dogs, or if you're disabled yourself, but my service dogs did service dog work for me, and then I also did therapy work, and I used my dogs as demo dogs in training as well. So, and then sports and whatnot. So my dogs lived very active lives and still did their jobs very well. Um, so she was one of the people that was having a problem. She called all kinds of different service dog places and couldn't find anyone that would train for her multiple disabilities. And I couldn't find any trainers that would train for her multiple disabilities when I needed help trying to figure this out. So she was a completely new case to me. Um, so she decided to train her own dog with my guidance. This is Mr. Darcy. Um, and we used a clear plan and handler goals and task steps and small consistent wins. And Riley and Darcy helped Darcy. And you know, uh, having a demo dog yourself is really helpful. If as trainers you haven't done that yet, having a demo dog is fantastic for helping other dogs learn monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. And on top of that, teaching all four different personalities how to handle a dog. So this was a trip where once I felt like they were at the level where, they were the community needs better words for this, and I won't go into my diatribe on this, but fully trained, because I'm sorry, but there's legally fully trained, there's fully trained that they know every single task they need to know in order to help you with your disabilities, fully trained, and there's a big gap in the middle. So when I felt that Darcy was not only legally fully trained, but also fully trained enough to help Rachel with whatever she may need, one of Rachel's goals, if she got a service dog, was she wanted to be able to go and travel, and she wanted to be able to go and see things. She loved history. She loved, camping, going out in the woods and things like that. But she wanted to actually travel and go to shops and things and not have panic attack after panic attack and just have to go back to the hotel. And so for kind of our final test passing, I don't know what you want to call it, but I mean, yes, we did an evaluation and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, enter exit the car correctly, all those things. But her big goal was to go travel. So I love traveling. So we set up a trainer traveling weekend, and we rented a place that was more in the woods. So it wasn't like in a city block where it might be triggering to her, in a small town in the time of year where they didn't have a lot of tourists. And this is them. She made it and she met her goal, and her dog helped her through it all, and it was a great experience. And since then, um, she has moved out of her parents' house. She dated and got married. She started competing in weight pull and in show. And she's currently training her next service dog with the same structure and the same plan. But in between Darcy and this dog, uh, she has developed many, many more allergies. She's allergic to almost everything under the sun. So since I don't specialize in scent work, I do know the basics, but she works with me and she works with a scent work trainer. Um, and so, primarily with the set work trainer from what she already worked with me, but we have, regular meetings and things to keep her on track with her obedience and with all the other things that aren't scent work related. Um, and so put that together, and now she has her former retiring service dog helping train the next generation, and she had a new disability, and so she has a new specialty person helping her with that. But, that doesn't mean she's not my client anymore or, not my friend, But by the same token, it means look how successful she became, all because of a service dog. So this was us together. I was training DK at the same time as she was training Darcy. So like I said, years later, she still trains with me. Clear plan, ongoing support. We created a long-term client and a stable team. So that's the difference you can make as a service dog specialist. But like I said before, not everyone is willing to put in the effort to become a service dog specialist. Only a few people are willing to learn the new human-centered method instead of what the current normal is, which is train the dog to the ultimate level and then match it with somebody and give them a couple weeks of training. I'm flipping the script on that. Uh, you can train a dog to do just about anything. If you don't train the human, the dog's gonna have problems later. That's just how it works. Most trainers stay where they feel comfortable, so we're back to the comfort zone. So nothing grows in it, and if you want to stick with just pet clients and feel safe, that's cool. But with your skills, especially some of you that have commented, and your ability to impact, is limited in that comfort zone. So outside of it is where growth begins. If you want to make a difference with your clients and a deeper impact, you can keep using the same model, or you can make it your moment and step up.